Kris Kelso, thank you so much for being here and representing the Conga Drummer, the Conga drums. I appreciate all that you've done, and I've gotten to know you through HPS. So thank you.
Yes. You're welcome, Paula. I'm so glad to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
It'll be it hopefully it will be impactful to a lot of people. So
Yeah.
as you know, what I'm doing is really talking about the side B behavior, the 10
hmm
positive legacy behaviors. And you, my friend, are a few of them, but today we're going to talk about courageous. So
Mm.
welcome, welcome. Um,
Yes.
and part of being courageous, those essential traits are analyzing pitfalls, experimenting, being flexible. But then we
hmm
also look at desirable traits, being assertive and risk taking, and
Mm.
understanding that you're comfortable with conflict. Do you see this show up in your business and dealings every day?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. The things that you're talking about are things that I have not only leveraged a lot, but I've put a lot of thought into over the years, and really evaluated and considered how those strengths show up and where I need improvement, even.
Mhm. It's interesting. As a leader, we're always looking to learn and improve, and when I speak
Yes.
of courage and courageous, that's nothing standing in your way and not being afraid to take those risks. Have you taken a risk lately you that you feel
Oh
has
my
been a
goodness.
huge risk, but you took it?
Which day of the week do you want to talk about? Yeah, there have been plenty. As you know, Paul, I wrote a book last year, and it was my first time writing a book. And I went the hybrid publishing route, which means that I invested a lot of my own money in the process rather than seeking a publisher that would fund the book for me.
Yeah.
But I get to reap the rewards. So that was a risk for sure. In fact, I didn't know going into it if I could write a book that would be good enough that I would want my name on the cover. So that's something that I had to work through, and but I learned so much in that process, and it has just been incredibly rewarding and opened so many doors. And then, as you know as well, the way we met was through Heroic Public Speaking, which is
Yeah.
an incredible organization that does some really high quality public speaking training. And
Mhm.
there was some risk there too, because I learned about that organization and got involved very quickly based on a recommendation from someone I trusted.
I did too.
And yeah, and then there was an investment to be made there, and a lot of time went into putting together the keynote talk that I'm now delivering. And so both of those were both financial risks and time risks, that I put a lot of effort into, and now I'm starting to see the rewards for those risks.
That is awesome. I did the same thing. I took that and jumped both feet in, right?
Yeah.
So, being in this courageous behavior too, the Conga drums, which I absolutely love. You're gifted in change and crisis management, right?
Mm.
Analyzing those pitfalls and experimenting. So let me ask you, when you're planning or when you're talking to your clients about planning, do you just plan one way or do you plan A, B, and maybe even C?
I do tend to be sort of always thinking of alternative scenarios. And, though we have a desired path in mind, there's always that question of, okay, what if we encounter this obstacle? Where are we going to go? What if that path just doesn't pan out? We have to turn around and start over. What's going to be the next step or the next
Right.
course of action? So, yeah, thinking about potential risks, thinking about obstacles, thinking about just what we might encounter along the way and how we're going to adapt quickly, just tends to be part of how I operate. And it's funny because until someone calls that out as a strength, it's easy to just think, well, that's just the way we do things,
Mhm.
and not realize that that's something that I've been gifted with and that I, bring to the table that actually helps other people that don't do that well. But I do naturally tend to look at things from 4 or 5 different perspectives, and try to see a bunch of different angles before I take off down a path.
And that's phenomenal. So now you've taken off down path, right? And
Yeah.
you're right there and you're up in the sky, but you need to, it's time to course correct, right?
Hmm.
Can you give our people, because of your gift and your experience, can you give people watching this maybe a tip or a piece of advice on how to course correct or pivot really quickly?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I try to do is to make small bets and experiment
Mm.
a lot along the way. So, what I mean by that is not necessarily when things aren't going well, or when it seems like a course correction may be necessary, rather than just make a decision and commit to a new course of action, is to try 3 or 4 different things in some
Ah,
small way, to experiment, so to speak, and to see if there's some measurable way to see what the right next step is
mhm.
before going all in. So, taking several different factors into consideration and looking at several options, and then, as I said, experimenting, trying some of those things out. And if you can invest a little bit of time and a little bit of money and get some measurable results before you invest a lot of time and a lot of money, then you can try that 3 or 4 different times. And yes, you're going to lose out sometimes. You're going to do something that didn't pan out. You're going to waste some money, waste some time. But in the aggregate, you save a lot
Yeah.
by making small bets and testing and experimenting before you fully commit to something for the long haul.
I think you said that once to me, and it was something about Benjamin Franklin.
It was actually over 1,000 failures in his experiments, but he said, I haven't failed 1,000 times. I've simply found 1,000 ways to not make a light bulb. And
That's it.
he saw failure as learning,
Yeah.
that every time you fail, you don't really fail unless you don't learn anything, unless you take nothing away from the experience. It's not a failure, it's an education. And I've had a lot of education in my lifetime because I've tried a lot of things that just didn't work, but I always take something away from it.
Mhm.
And so that is that experimenting, risk-taking mindset. But the key is to put some boundaries on it, so you're not making big bets with those experiments. You're trying little things, right? I didn't mortgage my house for this book. I put
Yeah.
some money on the line, and I took some risk, but I didn't take it all. And I tried several things. It was a couple of years of planning and learning and experimenting before I went all in. So it's calculated risk, and it's learning along the way. Seeing failure and experimentation as learning is a key perspective and mindset that helps you to do that well.
Yeah, and that really goes along with that change in crisis management because it really is impactful there. You know, the Conga Drummer, this is one of my favorites too. I actually love them all, but they're willing to add and change different sounds when they're using their hands in different areas,
Yeah.
right? Or in business terms, we call it being adaptable and flexible, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about flexibility in your perspective and how important that is in running your business.
Yeah, it's important in several ways. Even outside my business, I would say that one of the ways I try to be flexible is to adapt to the needs of a situation. If there's a leadership gap, I can step in and be a leader. But if there's strong leadership and what they need are hands to do the work, I can dive in and get my hands dirty and
Mhm.
do the work. In fact, there are times that I really enjoy sort of working from the neck down and saying, I don't have to make any decisions. Somebody else is figuring out what we need to do, and I just need to do it. And it's sort of a break for me at times. But then, when I get in those situations where I feel like there is a lack and there's a need here, I can step up and offer to fill that void and serve as a leader or provide some guidance or be a consultant or a coach or whatever the case may be. And I guess that's another example of maybe how I've been very adaptive throughout my career is I have been a CEO, I've been a consultant, I've been a coach, I have been a mentor or advisor, I've been a teacher. I've served in a lot of different capacities where my role is different. In some cases, like consulting, my role is to identify the problem and provide a solution. Mm-hmm. In coaching, on the other hand, my role is to ask a lot of questions and to help my client figure out what their solution to the problem is, not to provide my own. And so being adaptable to what the need is allows me to move into a lot of different scenarios and situations. And I really enjoy that variety. I think personally for me, and maybe it kind of goes along with this strength, this behavior of the adaptable, courageous person, I like change. I like variety. I like things to be different. And I don't want to do the same thing day in and day out. And so I actually thrive on moving through those different circumstances where my role changes, my responsibility changes, and what I bring to the table can change and vary from one context to another.
That is awesome. And that sums up the courageous behavior to a T. So my last question to you, and of course I know this because it's in my book too, but what's your favorite song and why?
Oh man, you asked me this and it was so hard because I love music and I've loved so many songs. And I think I went back to an oldie from the either 80s or 90s, but it was a time when I was, a teenager growing up. There's a band called Whiteheart, Christian rock band who sang a song called Let It Go. It's not the one from the Disney movie. It's much older than that, but it's a song called Let It Go. And it just talks about how freeing it is when you just decide to give something up, to quit holding a grudge, to quit being angry, to quit holding on to things that really don't help you. They just drag you down and hold you back. And so it's sort of throwing off the bondage, letting go of the baggage that we carry around, and just how wonderful and freeing that is to say, you know what, I don't care anymore. Yeah. So it's been a song that I enjoyed back then and that I still listen to today. And the message is really encouraging and uplifting. So that's why I enjoy it.
I love that. And I'm going to add that to the courageous playlist for you. So thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. And go out in the world and keep being courageous because you do a phenomenal job.
Thank you so much, Paul. I really enjoyed this.